evening, I'm Alison Stewart. Keith Olbermann has the night off. In the only statement he has made about the CIA's destruction of those interrogation tapes, President Bush said, quote, "It will be interesting to know what the true facts are." Redundancy aside, our fourth story on the countdown, the search for truth facts uncovers a doozy. The New York Times reporting that Harriet Miers wasn't the only White House lawyer who discussed the handling of those tapes before they were erased. There were at least 3 others, including Alberto Gonzales. No comment from President Bush on the new development, but his press secretary certainly was not happy about that report. More on that in a moment. We'll also have more on the other burning issue on the grounds of the White House today, literally burning. Vice President Cheney's ceremonial offices going up in flames. But we begin tonight with the metaphorical heat with today's Times report that, quote, at least 4 top White House lawyers took part in discussions with the CIA between 2003 and 2005 about whether to destroy videotapes showing the secret interrogations of 2 operatives from al-Qaeda, end quote. Officials telling the Times that those who took part included Alberto Gonzales, who served as White House counsel at the time, David Addington, who used to be Vice President Cheney's lawyer, now his chief of staff, John Bellinger, who was the senior lawyer at the National Security Council until 2005, and Harriet Miers, who replaced Mr. Gonzales as White House counsel. She's the only White House official that administration officials have admitted knew about the tapes. At the White House today, Press Secretary Dana Perino breaking with her no-comment policy, sort of, to demand a limited retraction from the New York Times. The White House press office is not denying the substance of the story or its headline, only its subheadline, which read that the, quote, White House role was wider than it said, end quote. Specifically, Ms. Perino taking issue with the implication that she might have been misleading when discussing any details related to the tapes.
In fact, right after the story first broke, people within the administration did say privately that, in fact, Harriet Miers had told the CIA not to destroy the tapes, and that suggested that the White House, in fact, was saying don't destroy. Now this New York Times story is saying 4 people in the president or vice president's inner circle actually talked to the CIA about it. So that does suggest a wider role.
I am not accountable for all the anonymous sources that you turn up. I'm not. I am accountable. I speak for the president and for the White House. This says that I was misleading, and I was not.
It doesn't say you. It doesn't say you at all. And there were other people in the administration.
The White House is not comment. The only thing that I have said from this podium is regarding to the president and his recollection. And if CNN has different information that they want to provide to me that contradicts what I've said, let's see it.
Specifically cites you. It's talking about the White House, the administration in general.
I speak for the White House. I represent the White House.
Why do you take it personally?
I'm not taking it personally. I'm taking it, and I speak for the White House. It's not a personal thing. The White House asked for a correction, and I would remind you, the New York Times is going to do one.
The New York Times removing only the subheading. The substance of its reporting stands. When asked to comment on the article yesterday before it was published, spokesman for the White House, the Vice President's office, and the CIA all declined to do so. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, the man applying to be the number 2 official at the Justice Department was getting an earful about those destroyed tapes from lawmakers when Republican Arlen Specter asked Judge Mark Phillip about the Justice Department's recent declaration that Congress should wait until the department has finished its interrogation of the torture tapes. Judge Phillip hit it straight down the middle.
Wouldn't you agree that even if criminal prosecutions are jeopardized, that it is more important, as acknowledged by the courts, that Congress have primacy to proceed as Congress ultimately concludes the public interest requires?
I would hope, Senator, to not have to pick between the two. I would hope to be able to try to work with Congress such that Congress could perform its oversight missions and criminal prosecutions, if they were there to be made, could be preserved.
But if it comes to a conflict and you have to make a choice, is there any doubt that the broader issues that we're facing, which I've enumerated for you, whether we're going to bind the CIA to the Army Field Manual, what we're going to do on interrogation practices generally, how we're going to deal with our Geneva Convention obligations, international matters, all beyond the scope of the Department of Justice. If you have to choose, doesn't congressional primacy prevail?
So I wasn't privy to the discussion you had with the Attorney General.
Well, strike that part and just deal with the litany of issues I've given you above and beyond a criminal prosecution, whether congressional primacy isn't pretty clear-cut there.
So I think you and I very much share the view that Congress has broad oversight authority, and we very much share the view that hopefully that broad oversight authority can be accommodated while at the same time not jeopardizing criminal prosecutions. As to picking between the two of them, I would work very hard to try to find common ground so we wouldn't have to make that choice.
Time now to call on our own Richard Wolffe, senior White House correspondent for Newsweek magazine. Hi, Richard.
Good evening, Alison.
So how effective was Dana Perino's defense putting the onus on the New York Times that it had to issue this correction about a sub-headline, even if the substance of the reporting was correct?
Well, this was an excessive response from the White House. I mean, she used the language pernicious that this story was. And there are three ways to look at this. Either, A, this is a distraction. She's challenging the subhead of a story as a way to take away attention from the main thrust of it. Or B, they didn't like the substance of the story, and without commenting on it, remember the substance here is that the White House lawyers were saying destroy the tapes. Previous reports had suggested other people were saying keep the tapes. But if the White House was really ordering up the destruction of the tapes, then maybe that's what she was reacting against rather than the subheading.
Now, how is it the White House press office for a week enacts this no-comment policy on the CIA tapes, and then today feels free to comment?
Yeah, very curious here. They have been under very strict legal opinion and advice not to comment because not just of what Congress is up to, but because there are legal proceedings. A judge is looking at what's happened, and if there is a special prosecutor appointed here, then as we saw from the Valerie Plame situation, everything revolving around communications could be part of a cover-up if, indeed, this was all a big cover-up. So, very, very curious that they chose to comment at all, frankly, because she had such a strict policy. And I have to say, behind the scenes, that policy was upheld as well.
Now, the New York Times report, I want to read this one quote. One former senior intelligence official with direct knowledge of the matter said there had been vigorous sentiment among some top White House officials to destroy the tapes, but that no one gave an order to destroy them or to preserve them. So without proof of some direct order from somewhere, is this going to go anywhere?
Well, remember, Newsweek has also reported that Negroponte, then Director of National Intelligence, advised them to keep the tapes. And you've also got the head of covert operations who's hired a lawyer saying he is not going to be the fall guy. He got a green light to do what he did. So there's a lot of spinning going on here, and obviously these stories really don't match up.
Now, the Times story today, as we mentioned, reveals that these four people, Alberto Gonzalez, David Addington, John Bellinger, along with Harriet Miers, were aware of some sort of discussion about these tapes. So why did this discussion reach this particular group of people?
Well, these are the lawyers you'd expect to deal with it. I don't think having these people involved was surprising. But to come back to your previous question, there's a certain pattern here of people not wanting to go on the record and say, do this, do that. There is a gray area that obviously makes it incredibly difficult for people at the CIA or anywhere else in the administration to figure out what to do. I mean, make a comparison with the war here. Where was the decision to go to war and invade Iraq? People have still not been able to pin that down. I don't think we'll ever be able to know what orders were given about these tapes because that's just how they've been running things in this White House.
All right, as we push this forward, move this story forward, the administration is going to answer questions before a judge Friday to find out if a court order was violated. Congress not stopping in this investigation. What options might the administration take advantage of to make this go our way or at least take the sting out of it?
Well, I think you're going to hear executive privilege time and again here. If this comes down to who ordered what and who discussed what, they're going to say this is confidential, it's super secret, it's White House advice that involved the president. So they can shut down Congress pretty much. Whether they can do that with the courts is another question.
Richard Wolffe of MSNBC and Newsweek, as always, great thanks.
Thank you, Alison.